Hello, guys. Well, what can you say about the week we've had and what we've seen recently, especially when it comes to Canada? I'm sort of speechless about the whole situation, more or less, as a lot of people are also, because it was so just blatantly confirming and just outright showing what is happening in Ukraine and what everyone has been talking about. Anyone who has, a few brain cells to rub together and can see what is happening there. It just reached a point where you have literal Nazis being applauded in Canada, and I almost want to say that it was bound to happen, but this I didn't even I couldn't even predict myself what that would happen. But the reason why, for example, Zelensky hasn't outright come out and actually bent over backwards like the Canadian Parliament has in condemning this is because he's most likely getting the okay from his real handlers, the real people in control back in Kiev, who have a gun to his head, who are the fascists, who would actually see this guy as a hero. Like, this guy is a literal hero for them. So, according to them, this is nothing out of the ordinary, and they're actually probably really happy that they probably saw it as, hey, this is great. Canada is acknowledging our culture and history and our heroes, because when they say glory to heroes, this is the kind of heroes they're talking about. They're talking about World War II Nazis who fought with the German Nazis against the Soviet Union and against Polish people and against Jewish people. So because Zelensky is a puppet, he hasn't outright said anything. Like, he might get the okay because there's this constant kind of struggle between the fascists, what they present to the West in order to get more weapons and more funding, because they want to keep an appearance of some kind of decency, right? And them actually being proud of their Nazi culture and heritage. That's why you would see in constantly, as I showed you before, whenever you see a Western media camera point the camera at a Ukrainian soldier, they will have some like Nazi paraphernalia or patches. And the reason for that is because even though they're probably told to, tone the Nazi stuff down, and they do to a certain extent, they can't help themselves because it is part of their culture. It's something they're proud of. They have torchlit parades every year celebrating a Nazi's birthday. And the torches you see is actually, for people that don't know, are what Hitler used to do. So whenever Hitler had like a rally, he would have people march to the rally with torches, and it was kind of like a hypnotic thing. It's part of the programming that he did. And Ukrainians do that every year through the center of Kiev. Thousands of people march this way. So it's part of the heritage, it's part of the culture. I'm also from Ukraine, and it's not part of my culture. I'm from a different part of Ukraine, but it is part of the Western Ukrainians, and they've taken control and they're in charge. And Zelensky is a little bitch, so he hasn't said anything about this, because if he does, he will get into a bit of trouble. I presume back in his country, so quote unquote. So that's the first piece of news. I guess I had to comment on that. One other thing I wanted to show you is this is the video I just posted. So you got Vovin and Lexus, the two prank callers, and they ended up calling Sarah Ashton a Krillo. Now, she talks about a lot of stuff. She talks about, killing, and there's this part two as well, kicking around, but she talks about how Russian civilians, or propagandists, basically journalists, have to be assassinated, and it's fine but they die, things like this. I just wanted to play this part where she mentions just something I've been talking about recently, this Mongolian ideology. Now, before I play this, I'll just tell you that Sarah is a moron. So does she actually believe this stuff? I don't think she understands fully what she's talking about, but it's good to have people like her openly express themselves, because they are morons and they don't have a filter. So they show us the kind of things that are being taught to them in Ukraine. So she was educated by Ukrainian commanders, so she talks about this as well. And this is the kind of things that she picked up. So let's just play this and let's see what she says.
Sir, you have a European party, and the reality is Russians are not European. Russians, as Mr. Danilov was clear to say, Russians have a different culture. Russians are Asian. And ultimately, they do come from the Mongols. They do come from a grouping, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy, of people who are wanting to be slaves and want to be led just as it was from the days of Genghis Khan. And so I wish the rest of Europe and the Western world understood that Europe ends at Ukraine. We are protecting European values and Western values the same way those did.
Okay. So, again, this ideology comes up of the Russians not being proper Slavic people, not being proper Europeans, that they're Asian, that they are, subhumans that had their blood mixed with the Mongolian horde, and this is that racist ideology that the Western Ukrainian fascists have. Now, their blood is exactly the same as like our blood. I'm from Ukraine as well, so our blood is all the same. Like, sure, there are Russians mixed with Mongols, like ethnically, probably yes. I mean, yeah, probably yes. But so are we. So am I, most likely. I didn't do the genetic test, but I'm sure it'll come up. And so are all the Ukrainians as well. So it's the whole thing is just retarded. First of all, it doesn't make a difference like what your blood is mixed with. First of all, it goes down to your culture. And like honestly, if you see yourself, if the Western Ukrainians see their culture as the pure culture, like I don't want anything to ethnically do with that culture personally. So I'm happy that my blood isn't mixed, isn't as pure as your blood is. If that's what you consider. Like I don't even know actually where my, if I trace my blood, I actually think that my ethnicity kind of goes back to, we've got over 200 years in Ukraine, but I think it goes from like the area of Romania and Moldova around there. I think this gives you a hint of where I'm actually from. But yeah, so but it doesn't matter. It's fucking retarded because it's racist and it's stupid. But these are the kind of things that the Ukrainians believe, the fascists believe. This is why they are fascist. This is why they are Nazi. Like when I talk about Ukrainians being Nazis, it doesn't. I'm not talking about them being the German nationalists, because they're not German nationalists. They're Ukrainian nationalists. So they do have their own flavor of racism, but they do have this whole ideology built up about them ethnically being better than other people. And that's what really makes, I think, people fascist and Nazis. That's why I call them Nazis. But yeah, they obviously don't want the rise of the German Empire. They want the rise of the Ukrainian Empire. So they're different kinds of Nazis. But yeah, this is just shows the kind of education these people are getting. And it's great for to have Sarah here to expose it. And the other thing I want to show you, talking about morons, moronic Western Ukrainian supporters. So we have Johnny FD, who came out with this video a few days ago, and he's talking about he's visiting a church that was bombed in Odessa.
This church that you've seen in the news, that the Russians decided to drop is it a Kazal missile? Well, it was some kind of huge ballistic missile. Cruise missile, I think. And they destroyed this beautiful church in the middle of the city center, where I guarantee you there are zero military objects around here.
Okay, so he's very certain there are zero military objects in this church that was hit by a missile. Now, let me say this first of all. Let me change the... So you don't have to watch us look at his face with that weird mouth. The things I'll say about this strike. First of all, the reason for it, there are many reasons for it. First of all, the most likely one is that it was simply Ukrainian air defense just going off course, like it happens constantly, and they constantly hit civilian targets. And in this case, it just happened to hit a church. That's one. That's probably the most likely scenario that happened. It also could have been a direct strike. I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibilities, because it's probably likely that the Ukrainians would want to polarize Odessa and the people in Odessa and the Orthodox Russians, who are more likely to be neutral or even pro-Russian or consider themselves as ethnic Russian. They certainly want to keep speaking Russian and want to have their services in Russian, which the fascist government wants to stop. So it's also likely that this was a kind of false flag attack by the Ukrainians to polarize those people against Russia more, and of course to make Russia look bad again, like they always want to do, even though we have constantly these strikes that they say Russia is doing, it ends up being Ukraine doing them. It could have been a Russian missile going off course, and it also could have been that this church was hosting military equipment. Now, I don't know how likely that is, but again, we can never really know, because obviously the Ukrainians aren't going to outright say it, like, unless we see some video evidence from someone. And I think in this situation, maybe it wasn't the case. However, Johnny says this with such certainty, and yet just a few more days before that, so this was 11 days ago, this was 4 days ago, this was 11 days ago, he did something. So let's see what he did.
Good morning, everyone. Over Ranalco. Today, I'm actually going to be meeting the battalions, the soldiers that we're going to be dropping off this donated NAFO truck to. I'm inside the Lavana. It's like a monastery.
Oh.
Let's take a look.
Oh, okay. So just a few days before that, he was in the monastery dropping off military equipment with military personnel around. And he is certain this church had no military. Makes my... I do not understand these people. I do not understand how people can, like, take this stuff seriously. Like, what mental deficiency do people have? And I think I put a comment down about Johnny FD supporters having the attention span of a goldfish to not realize that he literally just posted this video of him delivering military equipment in a church, and now he's talking about how it's impossible for this church to have military. Like, I do not understand the level of stupidity and just outright head in the sandness you need to have to be proud of delivering military equipment in a church in one video, and then a few days later just being like absolutely distraught how Russia could possibly, bomb a non-military target and a church which definitely didn't have military equipment in another video. I don't understand the lack of awareness, and I don't know what even you have to have for to have this kind of like almost bipolar kind of existence. Maybe that's it. Maybe everyone who supports Johnny FD is bipolar, and I'm sorry if you are bipolar. I mean, I think it is sort of like slack for me to call you a Johnny FD supporter if you are bipolar. I think most bipolar people actually have more brains than Johnny FD supporters. Okay, guys, I think I'll leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed this video again. I'm still kind of shocked about everything that's happened, but it just goes to show you that sometimes, like, reality is more absurd than fiction is. It's crazier than fiction. Thank you, guys, and all the best.